Paul Rieckhoff joins us on this, founder of American Veterans for Ukraine. Paul, also the host of the Independent Americans podcast. What about people like you who support the war effort in Ukraine? J.D. Vance, what does it mean?
Pretty much the worst pick possible. I mean, he's been very outspoken about the fact that he doesn't support Ukraine. He's echoed Putin and Kremlin talking points. He's echoed a lot of what Trump has said about pulling us out of NATO. So this is pretty much the worst case scenario as far as a nominee for Zelensky. So now he's got Trump potentially as president, Vance as VP, Johnson as speaker, who will be under much different political pressure. And it looks to Ukraine like the clock is ticking on some very dramatic changes in the way U.S. Policy supports Ukraine.
Yeah, I saw someone in Congress quoted, I don't think they put their name to it, but they were quoted saying, you know what, if you're Ukraine, you might want to hurry up and win this thing pretty quick.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, again, this is the worst case scenario for them. And I think also for Trump, he's had a great run and he's surging and Biden's faltering. But I think this might actually be his biggest political mistake in a while because it doesn't help him with independence. It doesn't help him expand the number of people he's going to get voting for him. It doesn't really get him a state that he wouldn't have gotten anyway. So I think that this is not a calculation about winning the election. And maybe Trump thinks he's so far ahead he doesn't have to worry about that.
Right.
But I think it's more about loyalty. It's more about ideological consistency and about having a successor, essentially, on the MAGA movement and all of his policies.
Yeah, I agree on all three of those things, especially the last one. That's how he's seen, supposedly by the president's sons, Don Jr. and Eric, as a young guy. He's younger than both of them, by the way. He's not even 40 till next month. Here's Nikki Haley, who was at the convention last night on some of the issues you care about and we were talking about on national security. Here she is.
When Barack Obama was president, Vladimir Putin invaded Crimea. With Joe Biden as president, Putin invaded all of Ukraine. But when Donald Trump was president, Putin did nothing. Putin didn't attack Ukraine because he knew Donald Trump was tough.
That's the argument Trump makes, that, you know what, he's afraid of me at the end of the day. Everybody says I'm too close to him, but he's afraid of me, and he didn't do anything when I was president.
You know, last night the convention wasn't terribly entertaining. I think a lot of folks were watching the All-Star game, quite honestly. But it was also like sellout night. It was people like Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis.
It's funny you put it that way. They say it's like a former rival night.
It's literally like people who you can't trust because they were in a different position 6 months ago. And I think Republicans may like the fact that they've converted, and some of them may have actually been candidates like Nikki Haley who could have attracted independents. Right. But I think most objective people view that as a bunch of people who did a complete 180 in the last couple of months because of political opportunity. It kind of reeked of the worst of our politics. And I think that's why so many folks are choosing none of the above. They're not happy with either of these choices. And I don't really know, Connell, how many people are even watching. I really think folks are tuned out. They're obviously watching the debates. They're watching the coverage of the assassination attempt. But yes, this kind of stuff, I do think, washes over people, and they end up looking at a couple of clips.
I think they'll watch tomorrow night. They'll watch Trump, especially after what happened, of course, on Saturday night. And I think a decent amount of people will probably watch, especially those who don't know J.D. Vance, tonight. But you may be right about last night. Now, on national security, one more issue. So Ukraine's a big one, right? I also thought it was interesting, some of the reporting about Taiwan, something we don't talk about as much, but put up from the New York Times, Trump telling Taiwan to expect a higher price tag for defense. So he was interviewed, Business Week went to interview him, I believe, and he says, all right, Taiwan, if you want the U.S. to defend you, you're going to have to pay for it. That's a little change in our policy.
Yeah. I mean, this all sounds like great information for our enemies. I mean, if you're in China, this sounds pretty great. If you're Putin, this sounds like a great week for you. And North Korea is probably celebrating all of it, including our turmoil here domestically. I think what's going to be interesting about tonight to look for is this is going to be a powerful storytelling moment. Trump is also very smart politically in understanding the political value of veterans. J.D. Vance, being a Marine Corps veteran, is significant. Trump understands that. He's also the first veteran on a ticket since John McCain. So we haven't heard from a veteran actually on the ticket in a long time. He served as a combat journalist. He's going to talk a lot about that. But I think Trump recognizes the power that veterans have to inspire in Americans and potentially attract independence. We'll see if he can square that circle. But I think the image and the idea of a Marine as our vice president is going to be very significant.
If you want to comment on this, it's not necessarily in your wheelhouse, but there's breaking news now. And Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, special counsel, has just said, and we figured he would, he's going to appeal that decision in Florida. Well, that was the documents case that was so that was thrown out the other day, which was something we thought would be hanging over this election.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to appeal it, of course, but it's another win for Trump. Trump's like running the table right now, and Biden continues to falter. Now he's also turning in against his own moderate candidates, including some veterans. We talked about this before. And now he's in a scrap with Jason Crow after he lost support from Mikey Sherrill and from Seth Moulton and from Pat Ryan. That's another part of this story as well. Biden is losing moderate veterans in the Democratic Party, and I think that's really hurting him with independents.
And you're thinking now more likely Biden does drop out? We thought that conversation
more and more likely by the day. I think more, they
well,
continue to circle.
It went one way, now it's back the other way.
The Democrats are eating their own right now, and I think Trump is happy to sit back and let it happen, and he's going to continue to push his agenda.
Adam Schiff, the news was interesting today. Thank you, Paul, as always.
Thank you,
Good to see you. Let's go back to Milwaukee.